Hey everyone, welcome to A Better Perspective. Tonight we have a very sobering topic to discuss, and here to discuss it with me is my great friend, Mario Minto. Now, Mario is actually originally from the country of Jamaica, but he's lived in the United States more than he lived in Jamaica. And over the last couple of years, he and I have developed a really good friendship, and I'm glad he's here tonight to offer his perspective on the very tragic murder of George Floyd. Also, we're going to be offer a perspective on discussing race and differences with our children. Both of us are dads, which is the joy of our lives, and we care about our kids and we care about how our kids are raised. And both of us are not just dads, but we aim to be Christian dads. And so we look at things like train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. We look at those things very, very seriously. And so now, typically, anytime me and this guy gets together, it's one big party. We are the life of the party whenever we're together. But we're going to try to temper that down a little bit tonight because we understand how sensitive and how important of a discussion that this is. And so, Mario, thank you so much for joining tonight.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, Donnie. And like you said, when we get together, it's usually for fun, but tonight it's a little bit different. And I'm honored to be on your show. And thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a great friend to me, man. And I just appreciate you. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to put a disclaimer out before jump into some questions with Mario. If you are looking for some sort of heated debate like you would get on cable television, this is not that. This is not what we're doing this because it seems like in every race conversation, especially in today's world, the perception can be that you're always being asked to pick a side. Are you with black or white? Are you with Asian or Hispanic? Are you racist? Are you woke? Are you for the police or are you with the community? And the way that we view it, in just to maybe bring a new perspective, is the devil is the enemy is the one who creates sides. He uses sides to divide people. He uses sides to pit us against each other, to fight one another, to argue, to tear one another down, because he understands that a house divided against itself can't stand. And this sort of division is very prevalent in our culture today, especially whenever you talk about some of the issues that we're talking about. So you turn on the TV for 5 minutes and you're going to see a culture of division and us versus them mentality. And so, like I said, if you're looking for some sort of us versus them conversation, if you're looking for a black versus white or a black versus cop type of debate, you're going to be completely disappointed. This is a very honest conversation that we plan on having tonight. It's going to be rooted in love. It's going to be rooted in justice. We're going to discuss justice. We're going to discuss mercy. We're going to discuss humility. And so just wanted to give that disclaimer out there. That way, if you're sitting on edge and you got your lips pressed together, you got your fingers ready to type on your keyboard because you might disagree with something or whatever, just go ahead and relax. This is just an honest conversation between two friends. We've had this conversation extensively for hours, and we just wanted to let you kind of in on some of our thoughts. And so, Mario, I'm going to start with kind of a question here. What are your initial thoughts and feelings on the death of George Floyd and that situation?
Well, my first thought, and anybody else's first thought, really has got to go to George Floyd's family. My heart is with them. I cannot, Donnie, begin to imagine what they must be feeling right now and experiencing at this time. So my heart, first of all, goes out to them, and they're in my prayers and constantly in my thoughts because, like I said, I can't imagine what they're going through. But then after that, there's a side of me, and forgive me, we are kingdom people, we're Christians, but there's a side of me that's angry, and there's a part of me that's sad because here we are again, having this discussion. Here we are again discussing the loss of a life the life of another colored person at the hands or knee, pardon, I'm not trying to trivialize it, but at the knee this time of a Caucasian person happens to be someone who should be upholding the law,
Right.
protecting and serving. And so here we are again having that discussion. So yeah, I'm angry and sad, but then I'm left with different thoughts and questions, thoughts of fear, because I don't want to get all dramatic, but it could have been me.
Mm.
It could have been one of my friends. It could have been, it could have been my son, And so in mentioning my son, thoughts of fear, because now I'm going to have this conversation with him, because he's scared. So it's a whole bunch of thoughts. So first, my thought goes to George Floyd's family, but then I'm starting to think about myself, my bubble, my area, my world that I live in, and so it's just real tragic. But I guess that's why we're here tonight, to try to find some solutions, have an open discussion about it. But those are just some of my initial thoughts. I'm still processing it, but it's just those are my raw,
Yeah.
initial thoughts, man.
Yeah. It's whenever you mentioned somebody who should be standing up for justice but didn't. I think that is probably one of the biggest road barriers in my mind.
Right.
That's kind of like, because you want to seek justice. Scripture tells us, what does the Lord require thee? And the first thing he requires is to seek justice. And whenever those who you kind of look at and say, okay, you were supposed to be a defender of justice,
Right.
and justice has been betrayed.
Absolutely.
And really what it does is it hurts trust. And whenever trust is hurt, nothing else really matters. And I think that's one of the biggest tragedies in this, is that trust has been violated in justice as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And, you mentioned your son and your kid. So you have two kids, correct?
Yeah. I have a son and a daughter. Son's 10, daughter is 7, going on 25.
Of
Pray
course.
for me. Pray for me. Pray for me.
See, and folks, this is where normally I would follow that rabbit trail that he just went down, but we're gonna.
My bad.
We're no, you're good. You're good. Speaking of rabbit trails, I don't know if y'all see his shirt right there, but his name is Mario, but I call him Super Mario. Yeah.
Hey, man.
What were we talking about? All right, so
Kids.
your kids. That's right. That's right. Um, so what has your son's reaction been? Because obviously he doesn't live in a bubble. Um, so what's kind of his reaction been to a lot of this?
It's funny you mentioned that he doesn't live in a bubble, because I really thought he did live in a bubble, because I tried to create a bubble for him to protect him from stuff like this. But it turns out that he was more aware than I really thought he was. And we had a very candid conversation. It was yesterday or a couple of days ago, and my daughter as well. But my son, he actually woke up early in the morning saying he was scared, because he had seen it on the news, and he's into TikTok, and apparently all the videos of the protests that's taking place across the country are on TikTok and social media platforms. So he had seen it, and so he woke up saying he was scared, and so that opened the door for the conversation, and he brought up Trayvon Martin, so I had to rehash that story with him and just progressed along, and I had to just essentially just reassure him that, look, first of all, you're special, and nobody should treat you any differently just because of the color of your skin. Nobody should make you feel less than a human or treat you less than a human just because of the color of your skin. Nobody should treat you that way, period, let alone because of the color of your skin. And so I used the opportunity as well. He's on the student council at his school, and I said, here, they never just picked you because they wanted to make up the numbers. And They picked you because they thought you were a leader, or they want to groom you to be such. And so you want to use your platform to speak up for those who don't have a voice. So just to go back, I let him know, look, you're special, and nobody should treat you. You shouldn't allow anybody to treat you any differently because of the color of your skin, and you shouldn't do the same. You shouldn't do that either, whether it's positive or negative. You shouldn't exalt somebody over yourself. And I know what the Bible says about preferring each other
Sure,
above
sure,
yourself, but
sure.
outside of that context, I'm saying you shouldn't uh,
Right.
idolize somebody and put someone on a pedestal just because they are of a different hue because of the color of their skin. And so we had that conversation, and we went back to civil rights. We did history, and I said, look, here we are today. It's getting blatant, and we could say these are one-off incidents, but like we've said in our conversations privately, that these one-off incidents are a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And it's happening a little bit too much, and so um, just having a conversation with my son and hear him say he was scared, that kind of, I had that sick feeling.
Sure.
I didn't even really know what to say to him at the time, and the fact that he's waking up out of his sleep. And if anybody knows my son, knows he loves to sleep. He'll sleep till 10, unless he's getting up to play Fortnite, something like that. But he was legitimately scared, and here I am. He's 10 years old, and I've got to try to console him and say, I couldn't say for sure that the thought came to me, like, I want to say, look, that'll never happen to you, but I couldn't take the conversation there. But I just had to reassure him, look, you're God's child. God is going to protect you.
Yeah.
God is going to protect you. You're special, and so we've got to look at it from that angle. I know I strayed far from the question, but yeah, we did have the conversation. I just had to reassure him, don't be scared. That's why we pray as a family. That's why we pray when we wake up. We pray when we before we go to bed, and so it's more of just the conversation was just trying to reassure him, and to also not have the conversation where I'm spewing anger at him and saying, look, yeah, you see them white people, you see what they do. No, I can't do that, because I can't have this conversation in anger. He's only 10. I don't want him to go the rest of his life and, be scared of people that don't look like him. Right.
That's good.
And I'll close my answer by, it was an interesting point that he brought up while we're talking about injustice. He brought up the protest, and he said to me, wait a minute, why? I understand the protest, why people are protesting, but the other stuff, he's like, Dad, I saw the people trying to turn the cop car over, and what's up with the fire in the building? I said, well, that's something else, son. That's not
Yeah.
that's not the main. That's not the protest. That's craziness. We don't support that. The protest, the peaceful protest, you can stand with your signs, and you could let your voice be heard, say what you got to say. But destruction of property, that's unacceptable. So I had to also address that issue with him. So it's coming from both sides. You got the injustice, you got the protest, but then you got the other side, the other ugly side to the protest, which is confusing to our children. So it's one of those, man. But we did have the conversation.
Wow. That's very interesting. Now, another conversation that I can see that you would have, and the reason I say I can see it is because, let me go ahead and clarify, I have attempted to read as much as I could get my hands on and study about questions and whatnot. Obviously, I'm not going to have the same style of conversation that you're going to have with your sons,
Right.
simply for obvious reasons. But uh, in 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 conversation with your son about dealing with police, or
Mm-hmm.
obviously that there's a mental perception already created, whether intentionally, unintentionally, just by the things around us. how would you recommend to him, or how would that conversation go to him? Like, if you ever have to, if you're 17 and you're driving, I don't know what the legal driving age is in New York, but say you're 17 and you're driving, or 18 you're driving, and you get pulled over by a cop, what do you do in that moment?
Well, that's a good question. Very interesting question. I haven't had to really have that
Sure.
conversation with him. Seriously, he's only 10, but
Right.
I did attempt to have it, but he wasn't really grasping it because he
Yeah.
goes wherever his parents go.
Yeah.
Remember, the only place he goes to by himself is
Sure.
school.
Sure.
But given, and I'm going to use your phrase for obvious reasons, given my state in life, and I've got to start thinking, how am I going to really have that conversation with
Yeah.
him? But I
Yeah.
did say to him, look, if for whatever reason you find yourself in that kind of position where, the law is getting aggressive towards you, don't say anything. Try to get a hold of your parents and wait until we get there. If you're older, I guess you'll try to get your lawyer to get there. But one of the things at this age, I think it's important for me to try to teach them how to make good decisions, make the best decisions that you can, and hopefully that will that will steer you in the right way, and you won't end up in certain situations. But the reality is, or it could be a reality where not even that will save you from an unfortunate issue. So I would say just be honest with the kids. Be honest with our children. Don't, like I said before, don't spew anger, but be honest. Show them the reality, but not just the negative reality. Show them also the positive.
Right.
We've had this conversation.
Yeah.
It's not all white people. It's not
Right.
all black
Right.
people. It's the problem is not hate all white people, or the solution is not hate all white people, or all white people are not the problem. So
Yeah.
we've got to be honest with our kids about that. And
Yeah.
so far I've tried to be honest with my kids and show them the reality, the positive and the negative side, and
Absolutely.
just reassure them that the world is what it is, but there's still good. There's a lot of good that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever we were youth pastoring, and we brought in someone from the police department who was actually a member of our church, and brought in someone from the police department to talk to our students about, this is how you if you're approached by police, if you're approached by authority, this is how you handle it. And I remember him giving this demonstration. He's like, so you're driving and you get pulled over. He said, first of all, it becomes a you and that cop conversation.
Right.
And I remember him telling us, like, and in that spot he has the badge and he has the authority there. So he said, take out your key, stick your key on the dash, they're going to ask for your driver's license and your registration. Go ahead and get those things. And he was very just methodical with it. He said, have both hands on the wheel. Roll down your window already. Just pick up that and just have it there and say, here's my license and registration. Don't ask them why you're thing over it. They'll tell you. And said, just get through that moment. He said, do what you got to do to stay humble and get through the moment. And there weren't just black kids in my youth group. There was white kids and Hispanic kids. It was a very mixed group. And he was telling them
Right.
all the same thing. And this is how I'm going to teach my kids one day. So you just get through and if you're wrong, there's a little line on the back of or you're not wrong, there's a little line on the back of the ticket that says, this is not an admission of guilt. And it's like, we'll go fight it another day. We'll fight the battle another day. But in that moment, you just try to get through it the best you can. And I
It's
just
good.
always remembered that. And
Right.
and I still do it. But yeah,
That's good. That's good that you said that. I actually remember me having a conversation with my son about that, about me getting pulled over and it was night, putting my roof lights on, my hand on the dash, well, on the wheel. And then when the cop got to me, he asked for my papers, and I told him where it was, and I'm reaching for it, and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
I remember a cop also telling me when you get pulled over, if you got people in the back, just roll all the windows down. Don't do anything that's going to make you look suspicious. Just do the very best. Like you said, follow the process, get through the process. That's it.
Get through the process, and if somebody did something wrong, well, fight it another day.
Exactly. Exactly.
But all right. So going from there,
Right.
I now we have talked a lot in our private talks about celebrating cultures. I think that's kind of how we worded it, and the
Right.
value of celebrating different cultures.
Right.
Obviously, you have a Black Jamaican culture that is very important to you and your family. Um, I've got a white Cajun culture that's very important um, to me and my family. And I think that and we've talked a lot about the importance of teaching our kids to be able to celebrate their culture, but not allow their culture to become the ultimate definition of their life.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that's where we can get in trouble because if it becomes the ultimate definition, I believe most people are not racist, but we all have our certain biases.
That's fear.
And
That's fear.
and if we don't realize that we have them, we can create blind spots when it comes to how we treat those who may not be of the same ethnicity or race of us.
Right.
And because we're not very good at seeing our own blind spots.
Right.
Um, and so how can we um, talk to our kids about celebrating the differences, but yet still but still recognize that we could have blind spots whenever it comes to that.
Right. I think this is an area where I guess my kids kind of taught me how to see that, because they, I guess, for the most part, were colorblind, and that is not good. Um, as far as differences go, they saw differences, and but they never saw it through the lens of skin color, or they never saw it through the lens of race. They saw it in other areas. And so when we started to have the conversation with our kids about black and white, it was a hard concept for them to process, because what they knew was black and white was what was in the Crayola box.
Mm.
White was the paint on the wall. Black was, like black crayon. Nobody actually looked like that. And so we had to frame the conversation differently, and frame it in a way of culture, to say, look, this is our culture. We're Jamaican. They're born here, so they're American. But your parents are from a Jamaican background, so you don't eat some oxtail and some jerk chicken and stuff like that. Have your pancakes, but you don't have some acting sausage for breakfast. So we had to frame the conversation based on culture, and say, look, this is your culture. It's not better than the culture from the South. It's different, but you're not better. Nobody is better. That's
Right.
just how it is. And so don't think that you're better, and don't allow somebody to tell you that they're better, or my culture is better. No, your culture is different, because that's how God made us. He made us all individually unique. He made all these different cultures. He made all these, colors. We sing the song in Sunday school, red or yellow, black or white. And we could go back and forth if that's actually the wording of the song. But God loves diversity. I think we did talk about heaven. Heaven is going to be diverse. And hell also is going to be diverse as well.
Diverse.
So that's a whole different conversation. But it's important for us to teach our kids about culture and celebrating your culture. But just because somebody else's culture is being highlighted doesn't mean that it shouldn't be understood that, oh, my culture is of no effect.
Right.
Black Lives Matters. Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that white lives don't matter. It's just in the context of where we're operating right now, we've got to bring spotlight to what's being affected. And I think we can't be intimidated, we meaning people, from both sides. We can't be, or we shouldn't be intimidated by each other's cultures. We should not be intimidated by each other's cultures, whether it's in the church, and I don't know if we're going to get there later, but whether it's in the church or in the workplace or at school, we should not be intimidated by each other's cultures, because that's what brings flavor.
Yeah.
That's why we're the life of the party,
Yeah.
because I'm not, even though, yeah, we're friends, we're kind of crazy alike, but there's things that you do that I can't do. There's things that you say
Yeah.
that I can't say, but the things that we do say as individuals, when we come together, it complements each other. And when our cultures come together, we complement, we don't compete.
Right.
It's complementing each other and just bringing completion and showing forth the beauty of our creator. So just to answer your question, I know I'm rambling, but it's important for us to teach our kids how to celebrate your own culture, but also to appreciate the other person's culture, whether it's food, it's the color of their skin, just how they do church or how they do school or home. So yeah, it is definitely vitally important to teach our kids how to celebrate that and appreciate that.
Yeah, God definitely rocked the spectrum whenever it came to a multi-culture, multi-colored spectrum. He definitely
Absolutely.
he laid it out, and it's beautiful.
It is very beautiful.
It is absolutely beautiful, and which the most beautiful place in the world, or the most beautiful place that should be in the world, is the church.
Right.
Because the church should rock the spectrum of color. It's that both of us, we're both born again believers, which means that we have a supernatural birth into a supernatural kingdom, a whole new culture that we believe is more valuable and more important. Now, I'm sure if I'm sure someone might get offended with me saying that, but we believe that our kingdom culture is more important to us than our natural born culture. And there are some things that are in our kingdom culture that require us. It's not a requirement. It's a choice. We choose to respond to ways in like the kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
like Jesus tells us to. So how should we respond as Christians dealing with cultures and race and all that? How do you view that?
Definitely. Like, I mean, you said it well. That's the spectrum. We should be reflecting the spectrum that God created. I do think that as a church, we've got to be more intentional in our efforts to highlight and to foster an environment that celebrates culture. It has to be more than just one Sunday every year.
Right.
When we sing a couple of songs in Spanish or do a couple of Jamaican songs, and then after the service, then we go upstairs and we eat oxtail gumbo, or somebody brings some jollof rice, and then after that,
I definitely need oxtail more than once a year.
oh, okay, all right, well, okay, all right, you're on the good side. You're on the good side.
If you've never had oxtail, find your nearest Jamaican restaurant and just go order it. You won't regret it.
Tell it. If you don't know, just contact me and I'll point you to a few. But yeah, as the church, we've got to make it more than just one Sunday. Mm-hmm. As a society, I do think that we've probably got to make it just more than that 1 month in the year where we pause. And I guess in fairness, maybe the society probably does a better job of highlighting and celebrating culture than the church does. And I could be wrong. That's non-scientific, response. But I do think holistically the church has to do a better job to highlight and foster an environment for culture. And that goes not just in service as far as singing and stuff, but in leadership. I do think that we've got to do our best to reflect. If our congregation is multicultural, then the leadership has got to be multicultural as well. I think that's important. And if we're not doing that, then that means we're probably not developing leaders, or, to use a more biblical term, discipling properly. Mm-hmm. So as the church, I do think we need to be more intentional. With that said, intentional is the word, not mechanical.
Right.
So you're not my token white friend, and I'm not your
Right.
token black friend. I'm sorry, I don't want to stir up anything, but that's just
Yeah.
how it is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be as serious as possible, but
Yeah.
one of the things that you'll hear, oh, I'm not racist. I got black friends, and that's really not it. That's
Right.
not it. We're friends. We're either friends or we're not
We're-
friends.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
you shouldn't have to use me, Donnie, to prove. You
Right.
understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
You say, oh, look, I got Mario. You shouldn't have to use me.
Mario over there's my friend.
Exactly. And so that makes me not what you think I am. No,
Right.
he's just my friend. That's just Donnie's my friend.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't need to qualify it.
Yeah.
That's my boy right there. So we need to be intentional. Make it organic, not mechanical. We can't legislate loving somebody
That's
of
right.
a different culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
That's
can
right.
run programs all you want, but you can't legislate it, man.
Because growth is not instantaneous. Yes, growth can be instantaneous, but you don't want to miracle grow everything in your
Right.
life like that. Incremental growth is better. Because every time I've ever read The Tortoise and the hare never wins.
Right.
I've read it a couple times. Slow and steady, a steady knock will crack the rock.
I'm gonna tweet that right now.
Tweet it. Oh, don't get on Twitter. Don't get on Twitter. Twitter's terrible.
It's an angry place, man.
Twitter's an angry place. Sometimes I just want to pray for those people. I just want to stop and be like, what in the world can seep into somebody's heart that raunchy, garbagey? And that's so not like fluff. I mean, that's just what it is. It's garbage.
Yeah.
Garbage. I'm like, how dark? I just want to be like, how dark is your heart? What happened to you?
Right.
Are you okay? Do you need to lay on a couch and talk it through? I mean, what's going on?
Right.
And that's another part of this story is sometimes I consider Derek Chauvin, the cop who brutally murdered George Floyd, and I just want to be like, how dark can the human heart really be?
Right.
And I kind of wept a few tears for him because it's like over his heart. How
did it get there? How did
you
it
get there? How do you get to a point in life where that's okay?
Yeah.
It's so humbling, and if he can get to that point, how easy is it to get to that point?
Right.
And Scripture says that the heart is deceitfully wicked above all else. Who can know it?
Who can know it?
And I want to make sure, like for me, and I want to make sure that my heart constantly stays right, because the Scripture also says that every man does that which is right in his own eyes.
His own eyes, man.
But the Lord weighs the heart or the spirit. And so, I kind of feel a sadness and a heaviness toward him as well. And anybody who would sympathize with the action, how did their heart?
And that's where it is, man. It's the heart. I've got to address me.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to take care of my thoughts, my actions. I got to take responsibility for my actions, my responses. I got to deal with my heart. Then I've got to make sure the heart of my family's right. And if everybody does that, like you said, growth is not going to be instantaneous, but we'll begin to see that healing.
Yeah.
Another thing I was going to say is that some people, we're out there, and I'm saying we, obviously me and you, we're not out there, but people are out there protesting that have never gotten engaged, that's never engaged in any kind of community building, no kind of community program. So there's dads out there, and I'm not judging and casting aspersions on anyone, but there's people out there that never been to the PTA for their kid's school. never got involved in anything that the school is doing for the community, never got involved in any community thing. I don't want to make it too political, but it's never voted in a local election. Maybe they're voted, for the presidential election, but there's a lot of us are not engaged in our communities. So we're not really in touch. And
Sure.
that, that goes for the church, that goes for the individuals as well. We're not in touch with what's happening in our community. We're not feeling the pulse of our community. But when something like this happens, we jump on somebody's bandwagon
Yeah.
and we start fighting a battle that we only heard about, but we're not in the trenches trying to make those changes happen.
Right.
Doing the daily work. We get on a stage when it's made the news and it's on CNN and we're out there. But the day to day, when it's not happening, what are we doing?
Right.
When it's not happening, when God forbid, George Floyd has already lost his life, Trayvon Martin. But outside of those, what were we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Were we addressing our hearts? Were we
Yeah.
engaged in our community? Were we teaching our sons?
Yeah.
Were we teaching our daughters? Were we uplifting them? On both sides. I'm black and white.
Sure.
Brown, whatever other color there is. What are we doing when things are quiet?
Yeah.
What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we saying when things are quiet? So I think that plays a part into it, where we're not tapped into our communities.
Yeah.
I do believe it's our responsibility, or I don't know if it's a responsibility, but yeah, I don't know any other words.
Are we our brother's keeper, or are we not our brother's keeper?
True. Good point.
It's we either are or we are not. And the greatest race that God ever created was the human race. And we are both a part of that, and it's absolutely beautiful. That doesn't take away the differences we had. We talked about, hey, you need to celebrate your differences, but your difference doesn't mean that your difference is superior to someone else's difference.
Exactly.
It's just yours that you get the privilege to have, and it's an honor to have it. And
right.
Man, I'm going to wrap this up. Mario, thank you so much for coming on this evening and just kind of talking through a lot of this with me. And I hope that some of you out there received a better perspective. That being said, Mario, I'm going to give you the last word, man. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know. I've been talking a lot, man, but I appreciate the opportunity for, being here and being able to talk about this. And, I hope I didn't disappoint anyone. I am angry. Just as angry and disappointed and sad and outraged like any other, black person, if I may say that. But at the same time, I've got kids to raise, and I can't push my anger. I don't want to send that message to my kids. Yeah, I want to show them what's happening and the reality of what's happening. But I've got to, at the end of the day, I've got to empower my kids. That's my responsibility, not to pass on a negative feeling or to pass on anger to them. So every time something happens, they respond in anger. I've got to pass on something positive and say, yeah, what happened was bad, but here's how we respond. You've got to respond by knowing that you have the potential. Nobody is greater than you because of their skin color or because of your skin color. Nobody should treat you that way. You did say something about being my brother's keeper. Mama always said, show me your company, I tell you who you are. So find the right friends, find the right company, the right crowd to hang with. That's going to uplift you. Like I found Donnie, and I never knew it, but he's pretty uplifting. He's a good guy. But seriously, at the end of the day, I've got to empower my kids because, like you said, it starts with the heart. I got to deal with myself. Then whatever is in my heart will flow out to my kids and to my community. So if I ask God to help me to have love in my heart, then love will come out. And I do think that's it. As a church, let's continue to pray for each other. I do believe that it's a time for us to pray for healing, pray for mercy, and be intentional about welcoming different cultures and celebrating each other, celebrating our differences, not isolating it, but celebrating our differences. Because that's pretty cool, man. That's very cool. That's very cool when we get together like that. So I'm going to sign out on that. I really hope I made sense, but I thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that everybody enjoyed it, and hopefully you have a better perspective this evening. And God bless all of you. And next week, 10 o'clock, very special guest. You don't want to miss that. And see you next week. Bye-bye.